So I have put out the following things on Blackboard. First of all, I set up a separate tab, but it's called BSG Updates. And on there, I have the whole schedule. So I'm going to show you the whole schedule right now. Well, actually, I'm not going to show you the whole schedule because I'm going to show you through decision number 18. There wasn't enough room on the page for everything else. But I want you to note that there is a quiz that was made available yesterday, and it is due by the 16th. It's a 45-minute quiz, and it's one that you probably want to do before you really start making your decisions, because it's about the game and the user guide. So what it does is kind of prompts you along to improve your understanding of the game. The first decision round is due on the 16th at 11 o'clock at night. That's 11 o'clock Pacific time. The second decision is on the 23rd, and then on the 26th, I reset the decisions. So this gives you some time. If you recall, the first two decisions you make start off exactly the same place as the real decision 10 and real decision 11. So you just get the two opportunities, and then I want to give you enough time so you can study the results, so I can reset the game and have you begin with actual decision number 11 on the 2nd of March. And I'll guarantee you it's going to take about 5 or 6 hours for you to make those first couple of decisions. Now, I've set about 90% of all of the events to start at 11 o'clock at night. And the other 5% are the availability of the BSG game, which I did yesterday at 2:30. And then the mid-game evaluations become available about halfway down that sheet on March the 16th, also at 2 p.m. Everything else I've tried to keep. Oh, there's a third one there. The BSG quiz number 2, there's a second quiz, and it's 90 minutes. And it's available on the 17th, again at 12 noon. I think it's at 12 noon. It's what it is at noontime. Otherwise, could you see everything is pretty much the same time? And there are a couple places where you've got double assignments. The preparation of the evaluations, midterm and end of game. The end of game, of course, you can't see. And the preparation of a 3-year strategic plan, which will probably take you 2 or 3 hours to put together correctly. And there's one of those in the 25th of March, and then another one. All of them I've tried to set up as being a week apart, but there's one point where I have to put 2 back to back in order to get everything done by the time of the final exam. So get yourself a copy of this. You can get it online. There is a copy under the thing called BSG updates on Blackboard, and you can pull that down and make a copy for your own personal file. But it's important that you have that information.
Excuse me, Bill.
Don't miss it. Did someone say, have something there that they want to ask?
Yes, Bill, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Are we to do the quiz individually, or do we do it with our group member?
The quiz is individual.
Okay, and then also my group, there's only 2 of us.
Okay, well, you notice there's a couple people I have left over there for some reason. And we will make some adjustments on that, and I'll do that quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Then I want to go ahead with another PowerPoint that'll take us pretty well to the end of the hour. And please interrupt as we go along.
How how many people will be in a group? Like, is it a group of 5, 4, 3?
It is typically it would be 3. There are a couple of situations where I had 4. I don't think anyone in this class, as I look around here, I don't see any of the kids from China, but those students are physically in China, and there's no need making them get up at all hours of the day or night. So in one of the other classes, there are 4 kids, all playing from China. So okay, I'll put you all in the same unit so you can work out your time schedules at a reasonable hour instead of being 12 hours behind. So that'll make it easier for them to get work done. Otherwise, I wanted to have 3 per team, and if we've got less than that, we'll get that fixed.
Will we
Okay,
be able to like communicate with our partners like at the end of it each class schedule, or you want that on us to like make our own time to meet with our group?
Omar, I heard part of that, but I didn't hear all of it. Could you repeat it a little bit louder?
Are you gonna allow us to have time at the end of class to like meet with our group, or should we like take initiative ourselves and start making time to meet with our own group members?
You're going to have to make time for yourself because
Okay.
this is going to take a couple hours a week. So you got 2 1-hour sessions with me, and it's going to be at least 2 more hours, more than likely initially probably 3 to 4 hours, maybe as much as 6 hours. You've got to figure out who's going to be the boss, what function each of you are going to have in the game, and you've got a lot of decisions to make, particularly at the beginning. They'll overwhelm you initially.
All right, and then you said like on the syllabus there's going to be a schedule of what time each decision is due by, right?
Yes, you look out under BSG updates, and the schedule is there. It's the
Thank
same
you.
one I just showed on the screen earlier.
Thank you.
Okay, so they're also, I put out all of the PowerPoint decks through the one that I'm showing this evening. And those are under, oddly enough, PowerPoint decks. There's 2 assignments that I have, and you need to begin checking that periodically, in fact, regularly. One of them is the a reaffirmation of the reading assignment, the first 33 pages of Magretta, and the first 15 pages of what is strategy. Finally, under information, there is an assignment of the PowerPoints that you're going to do. And Omar, there you are going to have to get together again for some other times together. Each of you's been assigned an article from the Harvard Business Review, which you can find online. And you're supposed to make a 10-minute PowerPoint presentation on that article. I want to have everybody involved in it. Finally, I did put out there an assignment to pull down an article called Loomescape, and the instructions for where to get that are there. This is the first case study that we'll do, and it's a freebie, but you have to get it from online. That bring you up to date? Okay. Well, I have a specific purpose for talking about this tonight, and this is the idea of head-to-head competition, or competition to be the best. And the game itself, if you look at it, they talk about this being head-to-head competition. As you're going to find out, head-to-head or competition to be the best is kind of a zero-sum game. and it's not the one that you want to play. You want to play a game like um, Michael Porter says, which is to do things that'll be different. So you are distinctive in the marketplace. Now, the person who was best known for uh, competing to be the best was Jack Welch. And Jack Welch died about a year ago. Anybody know who he was? Well, it just shows how old I'm getting, because he was president of General Electric from 1980 to 2000. And everybody knew who he was back in the days of the turn of the century. Today, it's more likely you think about him as being the guy that owned Welch's grape juice or Welch's grape jelly. Of General Electric was thought of as being the best executive in the world. And his philosophy was always to be
Professor, you're cutting off.
number one or number two in your industry for that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, there's maybe one other thing I can do here to reduce that. Well, I don't have much. I had some tech support on this afternoon because I got cut off this morning with my class, and I should be okay where I am now because I've cut off everything else. I don't know whether it impacts. I think it's all in my computer and it has nothing to do with you all. So Jack Welch at the time was president in the heady years for General Electric. A company like General Electric has 200 or 300 companies under its umbrella. And so every year he would look at the companies, and if they were not number one or number two in their standing in the industry, in that industry segment, he would sell that company. And over the years that he was in office, they probably sold over 100 companies. The reason he wanted to do that is because he said, look, the guy who is the biggest hitter in the industry subsegment, is the one that's really going to call the shots as to what strategy will look like. And everyone else has to just duplicate him. Well, Porter says that this is not the way to do things. He says no. And being the best means grappling with the competition head on. And the result of this is that features and benefits that are offered by various competitors in the marketplace tend to merge. And prices converge into raw price competition. So people, as soon as somebody comes up with a new feature or benefit for their product, everyone else copies it. You can see that this past week, Popeye fried chicken has now announced a fried fish dish that on a bun. And the comments that I saw on that pointed out that about a year ago, when there was a frenzy about buying the Popeye fried chicken because they had a new recipe for it, other companies have taken notice, and now McDonald's, for example, is offering a fried chicken sandwich. And you know it's going to taste very much like the Popeye. The Chick-fil-A is involved in that competition head on. And what's going to happen is everyone's going to offer the same thing. And the benefit that you had by being different or having a new product are all going to be neutralized. Well, how does this happen? And Porter describes it this way. He says, to begin with, you have to understand, what is the criteria to measure the best? Because there are all kinds of things you could use that say that you're the best. You know, here if you read the things that they put out at the school at Cal State, you see that we're the best is uh, in helping people who are veterans to get their education. We're the best. One of the best in entrepreneurship. We really are the best in cybersecurity. But you'll find that they pick anything that they can in the school's repertoire to show that we're best in some area. And this really is a great school. But how can we define the best? It could be market share. Now, I'm not particularly enamored with market share, and I think I said that the last class we had. And the reason, and Porter says, if you want to have the greatest market share, cut your price in half. Everybody will buy from you then, but you won't make any money. So the market share is kind of misleading. You want to be large enough to be a factor in the market, but I don't think there's any advantage to being the best in terms of greatest market share. Could be that you're held in the highest esteem in the marketplace, or you're ranked #1 in consumers reports. You get a best for every season and every potential competitor. So observing what happens if we look at the typical industry progression, when you get a new industry segment that pops up, opens up, you get a lot of competitors and they'll offer similar products. And you've seen this in your growing up years, how Google, well, it's probably a little before you were looking at the computers, but originally when Google came out, there were half a dozen other big players who were very good at search. And Google just gradually was able to overtake them with similar products to what the other guys offered. A few become dominant, and that's what you have with Google. You know, the so-called FANG stocks, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. Or you could substitute Apple for the A in FANG, but those are very dominant players in their respective segments. Smaller companies get squeezed out or bought out. I remember there was one that was so good that they really said he was going to be the all-time leader. It might have been called Netscape, but they just got run over by Google. What happens with the big guys is they begin copying one another. And the techniques they use for this are what's called best practices and benchmarking, which you are both tools you have in your bag of tricks at with the BSG game, that you could use those to improve your manufacturing costs. So the big guys dominate by copying one another and by buying down costs. And the beneficiary, the customers benefit. They get cheaper prices. That's one of the things about innovation. It's always better and always cheaper. But this is one of those things that has unintended consequences, and there is a price to pay. And as smaller companies fall by the wayside or get absorbed by someone else, customers end up having fewer choices. And that's one of the neat things about the capitalist system, is we do generate lots of options. So to gain market share, the remaining competitors do this. They copy one another right down the line. They reduce the variety and functions offered to their customers to help, again, reduce costs. And as the market grows more competitive, the big competitors strive to cut prices still further by squeezing their suppliers for more price concessions. And the bottom line is, and then they begin aggressively eliminating any features and benefits that the customers are buying, forcing the customers to accept compromises or to find, and this is a word I ended up inserting in the first night that we had, class with workarounds. And what a workaround is when you can't find the product that does what you want it to do, what you end up doing is probably using two products together. Supposing somebody wanted to use one of those Swiffer dusters, and they will handle this particular problem. But in the earlier days, when they had those Swiffer dusters, if you were trying to clean the cobwebs in your ceiling, if you didn't have a long handle on it, it would have been difficult to do. So what people had to do as a workaround was to get a pole from, say, a broom or from a mop, and put that on their Swiffer to be able to handle the height. It's a workaround. And what people would want is a product that can both clean up the dust under the couch or on the wooden floors, but also handle the slats on the blinds and anything up in the ceiling. So that's one of the problems, is those kind of features disappear. So there's less choice for customers, and this ends up effectively destroying market value. Along the way, industry performance drops. As that company matures, as the companies in an industry mature, there's less and less profitability. Cash flow is also impacted. The stock market, people that buy the stock are not interested in investing in poor performers, and that's what these companies have become, is poorer and poorer performers as time goes by. So as a result, the industry can't obtain, this is the companies that are being squeezed, they can't obtain investment funds that they could have used had they been available to improve their products or launch new products. So the problem becomes self-reinforcing, and you end up with convergence. And that was another one of those words that I said we wanted to see how it was used. As one company pulls ahead with a new product or feature, everyone else copies it exactly. And while this is a competitive advantage, when the new product or feature comes out, it's a transitory advantage, because while it was good initially, everyone else has copied it. Same with the people copying Popeye chicken. So what you end up with is companies look more and more alike. This is particularly true in something like computers. It's gotten to the point where everybody buys the same components. That is, every company buys the same components from the same narrow group of suppliers, and all of them are paying the same price for the components. And you've gotten down to where the companies look so much alike that the products are sometimes called white boxes, because there's nothing distinctive about them at all. Everything is the same. Just show me your price. Now, the competitors end up with less and less uniqueness in the products that they can offer. And eventually it gets down to this, that the only difference between companies and their products is price. And then the game's about over, because the price competition will completely destroy the marketplace. So we get into a function of limbo pricing. How low can you go to keep your market share? And what was once a great industry for personal computers is now a junk market. Who wants to be in it? IBM liked it so much they sold their position, and they were the people that invented the PC. So what do you have to sacrifice to maintain any level of profit? Well, it probably means you're going to have to go overseas to get the product made. And if it's here, you may have to have people take salary reductions, or you may have to first force your suppliers of your raw materials even to go even lower with the things that they're providing for you. So at the end, what happens is that competition to be the best is a zero-sum game. You have to be involved to a certain extent in it, but there's no real benefit for you. All the benefits, if there are any, go to the end user customers and possibly to the suppliers if the suppliers are big enough. And when I mean suppliers, I mean suppliers to the computer manufacturers, for example. So the competitors lose, they make low profits and offer low returns to their shareholders. The suppliers lose because low sales prices, and because some of their customers, the suppliers' customers, end up going out of business and then can't sell anymore. So the consumers are the big winners with lower prices, but they have to pay a price. And that price is they end up with a product that gives less value for the price, is more and more homogeneous rather than adapted to their particular needs. This is just a restatement of what I said before about the place where people have to do workarounds. So large companies where they're really squeezed because there's no margin left in the market and they can't force prices up, go to extremes to get their growth so that they can continue to be, their stock can continue to be bid up. And how they do that more than likely is with M&A, mergers and acquisitions. And some of these companies are so large that they've got to, if they're going to get a, say a 20% growth, and you're someone like GE was with 200 billion in sales, in order to grow 20%, you've got to find some way to get $40 billion worth of incremental sales for the next year to please the shareholders. And it's pretty hard to grow organically for $40 billion. So what the companies will do, one of the major alternatives is to go out and find another company that they can buy, and they'll buy that $40 billion worth of sales. However, they are caught in the situation where they have to make their reporting every quarter. And as a result, a lot of times the buyer doesn't take enough time to thoroughly analyze the property that they're acquiring. And that's called doing due diligence. So they're not real good at doing their due diligence because they've got to get these results in to meet their projections. And so poor decisions are made. And this is what happened. It really happened with GE. So companies suffer and even may fail. And the industry becomes unattractive. And when we look at GE, for example, until 2016, they were still flying high, and they had grown dramatically under Jack Welch, and they continued to grow spasmodically under Jeff Immelt, his successor. But finally, by 2016, the chickens had come home to roost because some poor M&A, mergers and acquisitions, decisions had been made, and the company just really fell apart. Now, General Electric has been around since the late 1800s. It is the only company, or was the only company, of the Dow 30, the Dow Jones Industrials, that had been in that average since its onset. Since they first started the first Dow Jones 30 Industrials back in the late 1800s until last year. And finally, their wheels had fallen off enough that the Dow company took them off of their list. And what they did, I think, was they substituted Walgreens drugstores, which is quite a come down from a company that was as great as General Electric was. There's questions even today whether it will survive as the position that it was in before, if they'll ever be able to come back. In 2016, I'm a century off here. 2016, the stock had dropped from $60+ per share to $38 a share. This was about the time the wheels were falling off, and it was later in mid 2017 that Jeff Immelt was forced to retire. And the stock really has dropped down to where today, this is today's, what it was earlier today, down to $11.42 from what originally was $60. At one point, it was down as low as about $6 a share, as you can see where that dip is down there before rising up to $11.42, which is a tragedy, but it's something really the market forced on them because it wouldn't allow them to grow the business at the rate that the business was capable of growing, but forced them to do some sleight of hand to try and get results in a marketplace where the results were really not that possible for the kind of growth that they were promising. So Porter says compete for profits and not for being the best in the industry. Because he said competition is really about earning profits and not being the best. Now, that is interesting, I think, because if you look at this slide, Porter says how you want to do this, how you want to end up making profits is by being different. And winning doesn't have to be head to head with a winner take all. And I've seen that a number of quarters ago when we were on the quarter system. I had a class where there were 10 industry teams. There was in one industry, there were 10 teams, each with separate company, playing the game. 8 of those teams finished with a score above 100. And that was because each of them had found a unique way to address the marketplace and did not have to get into that overall price competition. So this is one of the challenges you have, is to find a way to be different. So what was happening was there were multiple contests going on in my class that time, based on the 3 things we talked about, I think it was last time, where there was a little graphic that showed 3 boxes or 3 rectangles, one showing which customers, the second which needs, and the third at what price. And it illustrated the things that you want to do to identify yourself. And you can do this, that is, as distinctive. Identify yourself as distinctive. And you can do that by working around the elements in the marketing mix that you are going to be going after. Different advertising, more in or less in internet sales, offering a larger or more robust effort to help your dealers. All of these things will help to make you different. So there are really 3 alternative approaches that we could talk about on this. Porter's approach is to be unique, and he uses this terminology, and you picked it up if you've read the assignment that I've given you. You do it by doing different things or doing things differently. And those seem very similar to me, and I could point out areas of distinctiveness in different companies, but I have a hard time understanding which is doing different things and which is doing things differently. But the whole thing is to get yourself in a position where you're unique, different. Second approach is to use blue ocean strategy, and the people on that, if you may remember, I guess it was the second night we were together. I guess we were together on the second night. I talked about the different people who were strong academic people in the world economy today. And one of those was the blue ocean people, Chan Kim, and Renee Milbourne, who work out of a business school in Paris. And they have come up with an approach to try and increase the arena, the size of the marketplace that companies work under. Most companies define or have defined, well defined who their customers are and how big the industry is. But there's a large group of people that I've discussed with you before who are non-consumers. And those are people that have never thought about your product as a solution to their problem. And so what the Blue Ocean people do is to help guide you to those areas where there are non-consumers and where you don't, where they call what they call an uncontested marketplace, where there's the competition really doesn't dabble in that area. Third approach is what Clay Christensen would say, and now he's the one that wrote the book on how you measure your life. And he said you can approach the market to determine the customers, and this is a terminology he uses, job to be done. That can vary from one day to the next what the customer needs a product for. But he said the customers think about what they buy in terms of how well it solves a particular task that they're trying to do. And so this means that you will be offering unique products. And what you do is you look for customers who are, and these are two terms that I said we would develop further, underserved or overserved. A customer who's underserved is that lady with the Swiffer not having a long enough handle to get to the ceiling. One who's overserved can only find products that are well above what they want to pay for the particular kind of service that they want. And wherever these discontinuities exist, people who can't find the product that they need, or people who could find the product that they need and then some and want to pay less just for what they need, those represent good opportunities for doing things differently or doing different things. It happens that in the industry where firms are not merged out of existence or taken over or go bankrupt, those that are left can find a narrow niche to survive. And I was telling the last classes that there was one that was trying to survive was Toys R Us. And you may remember a couple of years ago, Toys R Us shut down all their stores. Company went bankrupt and through liquidation. That was the intent. But some savvy people came along and tried to buy the estate from the bankruptcy court and start back up again, initially with 3 stores. 2 of those stores have subsequently been closed, and I think the third one is in Europe. And this is quite recent, just in the last few weeks. So what they hope to do to survive may not work. This is a particularly interesting company because back in the 1950s, late 1950s, 60s, there was a company called White Front Stores, and it was a kind of a precursor to or a coincident market player with Kmart and to a certain extent Walmart and possibly Big Lots. They sold a lot of deal merchandise. They sold it very cheaply. Eventually they collapsed and were liquidated. And one of the little gems that was left over was a company called Toys R Us. And out of that wreckage of White Front Stores, that was the big Toys R Us that got built and survived for about 30 years as a big player. Another example of that, and you've seen this if you watch the stock market at all in the last couple of weeks, there's been a thing about GameStop and short sellers. And companies, those are the companies that are getting sold. The short seller borrows stock from somebody who owns the stock. and says, I'll pay you back in a certain number of weeks or days at a price equal to or higher than what I borrowed from you for, with the objective of being able to sell that stock short. They don't own it. That's the position that they're taking, is they don't own it. And in this case, there were some short squeezes going on where people said, you think you're going to be able to do this and make some money with the price going down? We're going to drive that price up, because each time it goes up a dollar, you got to put up, you short sellers have got to put up more cash. One of the other companies in that group was a company called BlackBerry. Does anyone know who BlackBerry is?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, what do they did? What did they do?
They used to be like the best phones to get before iPhone, and don't they make phones still? Like they're like into like making computers and that too.
Yeah, they were big in the cell phone business, so much so, and their real stock and trade was they had a special technique for encoding or encrypting messages, so you could use it for emails with confidence that nobody could steal your information. And so it became a name um, that described the territory. I had to have my BlackBerry. I could use my BlackBerry to communicate with the president or with the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff with confidence that my messages would not get out. So it really became the byword, or the name of the classy cell phone. What they didn't understand, that there are a lot of buyers out there that would like to have that, that were more concerned about playing games or doing very simple tasks rather than sending encrypted messages. And as a result, they got swamped. But they're still there, and they found a narrow niche where they may be able to compete. And that is the software, because their encryption techniques, or their way to protect that data that gets sent over the airwaves, is unique, and they may survive on that as a narrow niche player instead of the dominant factor. If the industry's marginally profitable, the customers end up losing the products that they depended on. And one example of that is interstate bakeries. I don't know whether have any of you ever heard of interstate bakeries? Even though you may not have heard of it, I'll bet everyone in this classroom has eaten some of their products, because they were the maker of Twinkies. And that bakery business is so terribly squeezed. There's no profit in it at all. And about 4 years ago, they went to their employees and said, look, if we're going to survive, if you want us to stay open, you're going to have to take some wage reductions. And so the union voted not to accept the wage reductions. And the very next day, Interstate Bakery didn't just close, they liquidated the properties. And so we were stuck with no Twinkies, which is a terrible situation to be in. And what happened was a company came along and bought some of these assets, and they had some capabilities in distribution of products, where by extending through chemical processes or different ways of making the product, they were able to extend the life of a Twinkie. And accordingly, they were able to use a different distribution method that allowed them to make a great profit on that product. So if you felt deprived, you can get Twinkies again. And you may be aware that once upon a time, there was a guy that was accused of murder, and he was able to get off and be found not guilty by virtue of using the Twinkie defense, that he had eaten so many Twinkies that it deranged his mind, and he didn't know what he was doing when he killed the person that was involved in that particular crime. And so he got off. So There you are. Got to keep the Twinkies going. And we will find that out of the ashes of some of these companies that do fail, that there will be other little companies that grow up. And they probably will never be big guys, but they certainly will be fun to own some shares in. So that's the story. Wow, I gotta turn that off. There we go. That's the story. And so as you're going out to try and compete in this marketplace, don't be concerned if you stub your toe, because everybody can win by finding a unique place to be in.